Hi everyone, hope you're well. So in today's kind of brief video, I want to talk about few movement patterns, positions, transitions that you could incorporate in your life if you already haven't, and that you could potentially benefit from depending on your current physical level and equipment. And the first one is fairly basic, and it's basically spinal segmentation, but having awareness and coordination to without too much thinking, to articulate the spine. Okay, so quite often you'll see online movement teachers, coaches, proposing, especially if you're coming from movement background, spinal waves, head leading, hips leading, which is all fine and dandy, or especially if you're coming from yoga background and you do all these really lovely flowy spinal articulations. Absolutely nothing wrong with those, and you can actually work towards those. But the basic ones, which you probably already maybe know, or you could practice a bit more, are cat-cow, so on all fours, hands underneath your shoulders, starting in a neutral spine position, and then starting to expand your rib cage and your shoulder blades. You're spreading them apart as you round, simultaneously tucking in your tailbone and bringing your chin to the chest, really engaging the muscles of the front, and then reversing. Okay, this is a great start, fairly linear. Common mistake, people start to focus too much on the upper back and they completely forget about the neck and they completely forget about the pelvis. So really be mindful to articulate each. And you can maybe one time, you can just focus on the pelvis, which can be amazing, especially if you're coming with some lower back tenderness. Just focusing on the pelvis and then trying to see if you can just move your upper back, going into flexion and then extension, which is upper back. Thoracic spine is notoriously known to be a little bit limited with everyone. Okay, and then when you get comfortable with this, you can add a little bit of rotation. So if the spine is in this axis, you're moving with your rib cage first in one side, up, other side, down, and then you're trying to connect the dots. Okay, so you're rolling the spine and moving the rib cage. Slightly harder, or even much harder than the basic cat-cow, but really useful to practice. And then here, especially if even this is a struggle, you can sit even higher chair might be better, where you're kind of eliminating the pelvis and you're starting from the head. So you tuck your chin to the chest, and then you round your upper back. And then you start to move segment by segment. So neck, thoracic spine, going to mid-back, and then to lower back, going as deep as you comfortably can, pausing, and then slowly reverting all the way up. Okay? So doing seated. Again, if you're sitting on a higher chair, it might be a bit easier. And then gradually, when you get more comfortable, doing it from standing. So tucking your chin to the chest, rolling, not mistaking with the hip hinge, which is something useful to note to differentiate the movement that's happening from the hip with knees slightly bent or knees straight. Right now we're focusing on spinal segmentation going down, spinal segmentation going up. And if all your focus is just these few as a start, you can get very, very, very far. Okay? Gradually even introduce some weight. The next one would be staying closer to the floor, or in this particular case, squat. So this is, or resting squat, or semi-resting squat, semi-active squat, or active transitioning from floor up and so on. So morphologically, we are all different. We all have different shapes of the hip socket, shape of the upper leg, the femur, and so on. And then all the structures can be drastically different from person to person, sometimes even from side to side. Also the level of ankle flexibility, length of the upper body, and so on. We won't go there into details, but just be mindful that everyone is going to have different squats. So for me, I was blessed with really good hips that I can rest in this position, be in this position as long as I want to. So one of the key parts that you can play with here is to get into deeper squat is quite often and it's not cheating by no means, is putting some elevation, books or some wedges, also playing with the distance between the feet, okay? For some people might have to go a bit wider, some people closer, and also being able, which kind of leads, going backwards where we were just talking about spinal flexion. If you want to go deeper into squat, my spine is not going to be super straight. I need to flex, especially if you're going into restful squat, resting squat, as opposed to heavy barbell squat. That's a bit different story. Okay, so this is one thing that you can play with. Spending more time here, using the weight, or just doing it like this, hands together, elbows pushing the inner part of the knee, which is called prying squat, just kind of weight shifting from side to side. Spending more time in this position, rocking forwards, backwards, or maybe even lifting the hips, stretching the hammies, lowering down, lifting the hips, stretching the hammies, lowering down. This is a great start. There are many also drills to improve ankle flexibility, but which you can do, deficit heel raises, for example, being on a step. This one is not the safest setup. Going all the way as deep as you can with your heels, and then as high as you can, working with both legs. Notice how it's wobbly, so I'm going to do just one. So going as low as you can, pausing for a few moments, and then going as high as you can. It's a great way to strengthen and stretch the structures. Also, pigeon stretch, amazing way to prep the hips for the squat. This one is pretty self-explanatory. This is kind of basic variation where I'm not being super strict of the angle of the knee, but ideally I want to have 90-degree knee flexion. So in this particular case, you can do elevated variation, which is going to be quite harder, but potentially more useful. So here, you can even put a pillow or something. So it's a really nice position. Trying to have 90-degree knee flexion, helping myself with my hands. Okay, it's not ideal setup, but just so you can see, hips nice and square, playing with the distance of the back leg, either knee being lower or being more extended. And then here, either lengthening the spine as I go forwards, backwards, or even rotating from side to side to really have a nice big stretch on the hip capsule. Okay. A few other ideas here you can play with is also lengthening, not just lengthening and stretching, but lengthening and strengthening the hip in this lengthened position. So I tuck in my tailbone, squeezing my bum as I go as deep as I can. Can also use overhead weight, pausing for a few moments, then going back, doing it for reps. It's a really nice one. Simultaneously doing hip flexion. So seated position, either back straight against the wall, which you're really biasing more hip flexors. Again, highly dependent on your anatomy, the longer torso, shorter arms, or the longer legs especially, this is going to be harder. Or flexing the spine, doing 30 seconds per side and so on. And one more here would be to work on adductor flexibility. So lower back pressing into the wall, feet closer together, using the weights, and then just either going up and down, and then as you go down, you just exhale and go deeper, or you go up, you resist, you try to go up with your knees, you resist with your hands and your weights for 3 to 5 seconds, and then you exhale, go deeper, stay in that position, and then try to repeat the process, gradually going deeper. So all of these can be quite helpful. And then also just kind of sitting on the floor, more often changing positions. There are many kind of non-linear positions, transitions you can play with, rather than just being in a static position. Even any position that you're spending more time in can be potentially detrimental. So this is fine, but also changing positions, sitting on the floor. Okay, Seiza. Options are many. Okay, let's go into our next one, which is going to be hanging. My lovely Bella. She's sunbathing, enjoying the life. So, hanging. If you have a pull-up bar, this is a really sweet setup that my dad made. She's actually adjustable height, and also it's a bit dynamic because you can swing. You can also use rings, potentially door frame, but please be mindful, use common sense. So here, there are many advices out there just saying, just hang. It's amazing for your grip, for your shoulders, for your spine, and all that is correct. But you need to be mindful of the level of your shoulder flexibility, potential history of shoulder dislocations, potentially current level of pain, and so on. So just please be mindful of those. So the lower the bar, the better to begin with. Couple of grips. You have pronated grips, hands facing away. You have supinated grip, hands facing towards you. If you have a bar that has handles, you can do neutral grip. If you have rings, you can play with rotation. So it kind of adjusts to the position of your shoulder that kind of suits your body the most. So common rule is gently holding the bar, in this case. Hips, your center of mass underneath, and your shoulders underneath the bar. As you're gripping, I always like to have, in this pronated position, I like to have my thumbs under, just because I'm going to be stronger, and I'm kind of touching, wrapping under, and I'm touching with the index finger. And then here, I just gently give more weight into my hands, less weight into my feet, as I have my ribs in to begin with, although you can play also with the mini spinal articulation, but that's something for other time. So my feet are on the floor to begin with. I'm in this passive hang where I'm just being stretched out, okay? So this is a great way to start. You're helping yourself with your hands as much as you need to. And this is keyword, again, like many of these movements that we were talking about today, gradual exposure. So start with 10, 15, 20 seconds, gradual working more, but you can do like 30, 40, maybe even 60 seconds. Then you can start lifting one leg or maybe even both legs and just enjoying the stretch. This is going to improve your grip strength, your forearm muscle strength, your shoulders, your shoulder flexibility. In my case, it was really helpful. But please be mindful to listen to your body and also to alternate. So pronated grip, this grip, mixed grip, and then you have eagle hang where you're working on the internal rotation, but that's a bit more advanced. I'm rushing ahead. So when you get comfortable with hanging with feet off the floor, then you can start playing with shrugs, so which is basically just fancy word of saying of lifting, keeping your arms kind of locked in straight and moving through your shoulder blades. Okay, articulating your shoulder blades, moving down the rib cage, sliding up and down. So I'm here, and if I have a good awareness, I'm going to do it like this. If I'm still kind of not articulated, I might move my elbows as well, which we don't want to do to begin with. Okay, and again, I have my ribs in, but if you arch a little bit, that's fine. Just be mindful of that. It's a really nice way to also strengthen the shoulders, and then you can also, when you get more advanced there, you can, I like with this one, I like to actually arch a bit more. You need to. I like to squeeze my heels together, engage my glutes, and I try to lift my chest up. I kind of push or pull, depending how you're looking at it, into the bar, lifting my chest up, pausing for a few moments, and then going down. This is a bit more advanced. But just by working on this, basic variations also, you don't be super strict. Be free to add a little bit of swinging, depending how high you are, rotating the spine, moving the spine, moving the shoulders. This is a really nice one. Although it looks goofy, it can all be quite beneficial. And this is actually, my dad made this, just so he and his mom, my mom, both of them can actually hang here throughout the day. When they come from work, they're gonna get retired soon. So I told them this plus spinal work, plus staying closer to the floor is super simple movement snack that you can include in your everyday life that will drastically improve your quality of life, your joint health, and really help you as you age. So strength training, dedicated flexibility, mobility training is amazing, but quite often they can be very kind of interspersed. So you have your hour and a half of training, then you go home and you sit, or you go in the office, you sit. So some of these, like squat variations, like spinal wave variations, you can do throughout the day without equipment. And this, if you have a pull-up bar, if you live close to the playground, hang, it will drastically help you. Also, if you're trying to improve your pull-ups or chin-ups, it can also help with that. And the last but not least, I kind of want to include this almost as optional, but I believe it's still very important. And it really helped me a lot in my early days of kind of starting to discovering physical activity. It's very simple, and it's being closer to the floor on all fours, touching the floor, pushing into the floor, producing a little bit of force. And that's crawling, basic crawling. And to begin with, you can even be with your knees on the floor. Opposite arm, opposite leg, opposite arm, opposite leg. So in this particular variation, I can have my knees underneath my hips, close to the floor, getting the pattern right. Opposite arm, opposite leg. Arms are straight. Then when I get comfortable with that, I can lift my knees off the floor. This is going to be more challenging, noticing your shoulders working a bit more. Then you can start playing with those forwards. Backwards can quite often be more challenging. You can go sideways. In this particular case, my hands can be closer together, my feet wider, and then feet closer together and hands wider. So this is one of the ways you can do it. Or you can do cross variation and so on. Okay. Also, if you want a really nice, a little bit easier, stretchy one that I like to include some clients potentially that have maybe achy knees or some other issues, maybe lower back pain. You can do high variation. So maybe shoulder works a little bit more, but this one can be really nice and enjoyable, especially if you focus on with each step. It's almost like I'm trying to stretch my leg, my posterior chain, my lower back. It can feel amazing. Okay, so crawling is great. Often I do it for warm-up. Before I used to do tons of crawling, like 3 to 5 minutes can be a really nice challenge, especially if it's uphill. Just think about this, going backwards, crawling backwards, uphill is like the best full body and especially core work that I've ever experienced in my life. So yeah, so these are some of the basic examples. Doesn't need to be fancy, doesn't need to be overcomplicated. And I keep coming back to these, and I regularly, as a real human, forget about these and then rediscover them. And I try to reintroduce them in my life, and they've been so helpful in kind of keeping my physical preparedness, physical capacity, and also I would very much like to continue using these as long as possible as I get older and older. Okay, even if I lose some of the more fancy, more stylish strength skills, this is something that I would very much like to come back to. Hanging spinal waves, articulating the spine, staying closer to the floor, being able to squat deep, crawling, moving closer to the floor are all amazing. Obviously, you have many more subcategories. You could argue keeping in touch with your explosiveness and jumping, being able to articulate what I mentioned maybe earlier, movement from the hips, from movement from the spine, so hip hinge, spinal articulation are all really great skills. Bella, wanna come here? No? So yeah, hope this was enjoyable. If you like this kind of format, be free to follow video, like, share, subscribe. And if you want to work on your range, flexibility, strength, I have a coaching app called Physical Empowerment. I'm going to put a link in this video. Be free to check it out. There's free 7-day trial for everyone. Take care. Greetings from Slovenski Brod, Croatia, and see you soon.